You are watching The Breakdown, Volume 1, a little something extra special from us at A Sports London, exclusively for the web. I'm Norm, along with Brent and Merrick. So, guys, let's start breaking it down. Mixed martial arts legalized in Ontario. Not right yet, but 2011. I know it's a big sport. I know a lot of people think it's a big deal, but Merrick, is it really that big a deal?
Well, it's the fastest growing sport in North America, and the first person to tell you that is UFC, who also has the most to gain from them entering Ontario. It's one of their best markets. Toronto, obviously, a lot of people head from Ontario to Montreal to watch it, so there's no doubt that they wanted to be in this prime market right away.
How is the sport going to change our lives, though? We're told that it's going to bring in all kinds of money in terms of communities. The economic spin-offs are supposed to be outrageous. And then everybody is going to become an MMA fan through this event. I'm not so sure I agree with that.
Well, no, and I think that's up to every individual person to decide whether they're not going to enjoy watching it. I mean, the economic spin-off, I think, like I mentioned before, the UFC is the most to gain from it. The fans have the second most to gain from it. And the economy, I mean, if you ask any business whether or not they have $6 million extra coming in or $1 million extra coming in, they're going to be happy about it.
I think MMA is just another sport, and I mean that with all due respect, Brent.
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely, like America said, the biggest growing sport in this country. And I think you can see by the amount of people that subscribe $50 to a pay-per-view that, you know, they definitely want this and they want to see it over and over again. It seems like there's a pay-per-view every 2 weeks or every week, and people just keep doling out the cash for it. So definitely there is a demand for it. And, you know, as far as the safety issues, like they've talked, and people are against it and everything, you know, I think it's a pretty regulated sport. I think it's very safe, much safer than, like, you know, boxing, where people are trying to physically knock guys out. These guys are just trying to make guys submit with the best techniques, and they're all trained.
Regulation is what it's all about between now and that first big UFC event in 2011, scheduled for Toronto. We hear it's going to be March, but that remains to be seen. Merrick, talk about some of the things that are going to happen in terms of the regulatory process between now and when that bell rings.
Well, they have to go down what is going to be allowed. Is there going to be any modifications to what the UFC already regulates in their fights? And I think that'll be the most interesting part about this process, to see if there is any aversion to, you know, what they already do. I don't think there will be, but we'll have to wait till that folds out.
You know, I'm telling you right now, I think this Toronto event scheduled for early 2011 is going to be the biggest event in the history of UFC, in the history of mixed martial arts. And the London guy, Sam Stout, if he does win his next fight coming up in Anaheim and is a part of this card in Ontario, I think for that night only, he will be the biggest name in the sport. We've talked about this before, Merrick and Brad. I don't know how you would want to weigh in on this. Do you think Sam Stout for that night, that Ontario event, will be the biggest name in the sport?
Yeah, unless George St. Pierre is there with him, because I think every Canadian fan thinks he's the number one guy. But with Sam Stout right behind George St. Pierre as the most popular fighter in Canada right now, I think if St. Pierre isn't there, for sure, Sam Stout has all of Ontario, all of southwestern Ontario behind him, and I definitely think he'd be the marquee guy that everyone would want to see.
Tell us why we're both crazy here.
Well, no, I think you guys are both spot on. I think the last time that Stout went and fought in Montreal, he had a huge ovation. Now, I don't know if that meant there was a ton of Ontario fans that went over to watch it, but I think UFC fans have very little to do with boundaries, and I don't think they say that's a Quebec guy and that's a Toronto guy. I think it's very much he's a Canadian guy, and George St. Pierre has been embraced by the entire country. I mean, he can go anywhere and get a standing ovation.
They're both entertaining fighters. I think that's one of the reasons that people love Sam Stout is he wins fight of the night basically every fight he goes in. He's just a really entertaining guy, stand-up guy, likes to punch, likes to kick, and that's what fans love.
Think of the symbolism of this event. UFC Mixed Martial Arts has worked so hard to get a primetime event in Ontario. It's going to happen. The best fighter from Ontario right now is Sam Stout. That one night in Ontario, Sam Stout could be the biggest name in the sport. It will all end at midnight, but for one night, Sam Stout can brag and tell, you know, his grandchildren that he was the marquee name in the sport. Think about Mike Weir at the Canadian Open. We all know he's not the best player at the tournament. But don't tell that to the gallery, because they would not agree with you. The gallery looks at Mike Weir as if he is Canada's Tiger Woods. He finishes 50th or misses the cut. It doesn't matter to them. It's the symbolism of the event. And I think Sam Stout really has a huge opportunity with this first Ontario Mixed Martial Arts event to take his career to another level.
Well, it's going to be weighing on his mind, obviously, in this next fight, because to be at the Rogers Centre and hear 60,000 people cheering for you, that'll be insane.
You agree?
Yeah, very much so. I think he has to be at that fight at the top of his game, coming off a win, and I think, like you said, it'll be craziness there.
It's amazing how people think mixed martial arts is this incredibly dangerous sport, this barbaric sport that should not be allowed to be a part of the upper echelon of what we consider top-tier North American sports. But look at in football and hockey. You could argue that these sports are just as dangerous and not as highly regulated as mixed martial arts. So for my money, MMA is another sport. Finally, it's been welcomed to the fold in Ontario, but I won't say it's going to change my life. I'm just saying, hey, welcome to the party, guys. Go make your money and entertain us, because if you don't, you might be dropping down a peg or two. That is what we wanted to break down with mixed martial arts. We also wanted to talk about a few things that are going on in the community right now. One thing that just finished up, the Canadian Amateur Golf Championship. Alvin Choi running away with the tournament at the beautiful Hunt Club on the Sunday. Do you think, guys, with this event in town, in the area, that we are going to see this crush or influx of more young golfers coming up through the ranks because they look and see these amateurs doing so well and they want to emulate them?
I think so. I think, that's happening everywhere because golf has just gone, mammoth. And with how good these young players are now, kids starting at 3 and 4 and guys shooting 66s and they're 10 years old, like golf has just gone insane with the young talent. You're seeing it on the PGA Tour even right now with Rory McIlroy winning and all of these young guys winning. It seems like, the younger kids are really stepping to the plate, and I think you saw it here, like even in that Canadian Amateur, Alvin Choi, 17 under par, tying the tournament record. He's 18 years old. He just shot 271 over 4 rounds. Like, it's getting ridiculous how good some of these young players are, and I think you're going to just see it keep coming and coming because these young players are turning in where other players are seeing these young guys winning, so they want to get in the game and they take their game to the next level.
Here's the thing, though, guys. We see these amateur players representing Canada and doing so well. They turn pro and they get lost. Merrick, we've been there. We've wondered where the James Letts have gone. We've wondered where the Andrew Parrs and the Richard Scotts have gone, and we still can't find them.
Well, golf is a very funny game in that way that it's not like hockey where you can burst onto the scene and do that unless your name is Tiger Woods. I mean, golf is a game that develops, and you don't really hit your peak until you're in your 30s. So, I mean, for them, maybe it's a little expectation that we're putting on them for that. But just getting back to the popularity of it, I mean, you mentioned Mike Weir earlier. His winning the Masters, I think, was that beginning of that surge, and now you're starting to see those players younger and younger that are taking to the next level. You could have 15 Canadians on tour in the next 10-15 years.
But we said that several years ago, and that is certainly not the case today. Graham Dillette doing his best to stay out on the PGA Tour. You have Matt Hill trying to make a cut at select events. We have to understand, guys, that professional golf is perhaps the hardest sport to truly master and stay a part of for the long term. It really just goes to show that what Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods and a lot of these fantastic golfers can do is just astronomically amazing, if that can even be a term, because these guys are phenomenal, and to expect our Canadian kids to be able to achieve that level, maybe we're asking too much.
I think golf is definitely a sport that's much different than any other one. Like Rick said, you burst onto the scene, but it's no guaranteed contract. You're earning your living by how you play, and the pressure builds when you don't make any money, and then it gets more pressure on yourself, and the mental game is part of the game. And I think it's a sport where you could be a star at 18, but by 19 you don't have any guaranteed contracts, you don't have guaranteed tournaments, you don't have guaranteed money coming in, and if your pressure gets to you and your game starts to slide, that's where the difficulty comes in. It's as much a mental game and the grind of trying to make a living without a guaranteed money like in any other sport. And I think that's where the difficulty lies in golf with young players.
We talk about positive impacts. Last thing, the Blue Jays. Do the Blue Jays have to be good and succeed? And I'm talking about obtaining playoff status for baseball at the lower levels to thrive in this country?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, with the moves, I mean, everything happens through popularity, and popularity is achieved through success. So I think when the Jays start to win again, And even then, even then you don't really know because of the placement that they're in. It's very difficult. So, but the fact is, once they start succeeding and once they're competing, then it's going to increase popularity in the sport and in the Jays.
I think especially that for my son loves the Blue Jays, but because I kind of forced that on him, and I think it's guys our age that I think we're the kind of the age where it's make or break. When with our young children, if we don't push them into baseball, the younger kids could kind of fade away. We were blessed with baseball from our parents or whatever when we were younger, and I think it's kind of up to the guys in their 30s and early 40s to kind of get their kids into baseball and keep it going, because if they don't, no matter how great the Blue Jays play, kids have other things to do, and they may just not be interested in the game.
It's a generational thing, guys. If the Blue Jays were to make the playoffs next year for a 3-year run, and there was this huge crush or influx of kids wanting to play baseball based on what the Blue Jays are doing, we wouldn't know if that was a successful movement for 10 years down the line. So we can look at and see what's happening in the big leagues right now, and Canada is represented better than it ever has been at the big league level. And you can argue whether or not these kids were influenced by Blue Jays winning or just the Blue Jays in general, or maybe they weren't influenced by the Blue Jays. Think of all the BC big leaguers. Were they really Blue Jays fans? That's a question you'd have to ask them individually. But you'd have to think, though, if the Jays were a competitive entity year in and year out, that would have to pull more kids who are looking for something to do towards baseball.
I think right now they're as exciting as they've been in 10 years. There's so many exciting things with Jose Bautista just hitting home run after home run, and the Brandon Morrow one-hitter, and the JP Arancibia 4 for 4 in his major league debut. Just things like that just keep coming up, and they're really an exciting club, and they're overachieving. So it'll be interesting to see when they go forward what decisions they make to keep this club either to the next level or as entertaining or as competitive as they are right now.
The Canadian Midget Baseball Championship going on in London and St. Thomas. You go to check out some of these games and you see the crowd just so passionate, and they really get behind their team from whatever province they're representing. You watch Quebec versus London. The Quebec fans are rabid. The London fans know they have a fantastic team. On any given weekend in London or in St. Thomas or the surrounding area, there is not a baseball diamond that sits empty. So it's nice to see that a lot of people are playing baseball, or the other version of baseball, fast pitch, slow pitch. Don't get me started on that, guys. I'm a product of the Blue Jays' first great run in the 80s. Yeah, was it going to be hockey? Well, the Maple Leafs didn't give me much reason to want to play hockey, but the Blue Jays sure did give me reason to want to play baseball. So I think just for Canadian sports, a good, solid Blue Jay team means a lot. Before we go, guys, and I said we were going to leave, Thomas Caberlet, his father's piped up and said, Thomas will not play with the Maple Leafs beyond this coming season if Ron Wilson is the head coach. We know that barring a massive explosion at 40 Bay, Ron Wilson will be the head coach of this team 2011-2012. So how do you think this ends? Thomas Caberlet's no trade clause is back in the mix right now, so by appearances, the Leafs can't deal him. I have a feeling the two parties are going to come together. He's going to waive his no trade clause, and Thomas Caberlet will not be a Maple Leaf come November. Merrick?
Well, I know what happened today is Thomas said, "Dad, you're embarrassing me. Stop it." Well, but once this, we know through experience that when Brian Burke hears about this kind of stuff, you're not long to be dealt. So whether he even makes it till November, we'll see. Maybe he calls back and gets some of those deals that he passed up on.
Well, I think I'll play devil's advocate on that. I think this Leafs team has a pretty solid chance of being a solid defense core, and if they got Caberlet under contract for one more year, they may do what they kind of did with Roy Halladay or whatever, and just kind of let him play out the string and see what happens from there. I think Caberlet stays the entire season and is gone after his contract expires. I think it's just too much headache to do anything otherwise.
It's just a relationship that's gone sour. It's two people who want to get a divorce but decide to put it off and live under the same roof.
They're doing it for the kids.
Thanks, guys. Hey, we'll catch you next time on The Breakdown.